This video is based on market research and it's for business studies and it's specifically considering primary market research. So, primary market research is also known as field research and it's research collecting first-hand data. Therefore, it's current and it's collected for a specific purpose. So, examples of primary market research include interviews, whether that's in person, face-to-face, online, or even on the phone. There's also focus groups, which include a sample group being selected in a discussion-based setting. Now, both of those are focusing mostly on collecting qualitative data. There's observational research, so this might include the use of sampling and observing their behaviour towards the good, or there's other ways of doing it. And finally, there's surveys. Now, it doesn't have to be online surveys, but surveys which may include a greater quantitative element. Now, the first I'm going to consider is focus groups.
All right, thanks for participating in our focus group, kids. Today, we're going to show you some itchy and scratchy cartoons.
Yay! Cool!
We want you to tell us what you think, and be honest, because no one from the show is here spying on you.
Why is that mirror sneezing?
Look, it's just an old creaky mirror. You know, sometimes it sounds a little like it's sneezing or coughing or talking softly. Now, you each have a knob in front of you. When you like what you see, turn the knob to the right. When you don't like what you see, turn it left. How many of you kids would like Itchy and Scratchy to deal with real-life problems like the ones you face every day? And who would like to see them do just the opposite, getting into far-out situations involving robots and magic powers? So you want a realistic, down-to-earth show that's completely off the wall and swarming with magic robots.
So in considering focus groups, each company will design it differently depending on what they're trying to find. So it could be based on their target audience or the nature of the product. If we think about The Simpsons and The Simpsons example, that included children as they were the target audience for the cartoon. They enabled the children to watch the show and then provide feedback. And this has been a common method when TV networks are considering a new TV series. And therefore what they do, as they want feedback, they might show the pilot episode, which is the first episode, get that feedback as to whether they believe changes need to be made and whether it'll be successful or not, and that might help them to make the decision as to whether to sign up the show. So anyway, the key benefits of a focus group. First of all, it collects qualitative data. So that provides greater reasoning, which helps the understanding of the data. So in other words, find out those questions why. The focus group or the focus group host can ask follow-up questions as they can interact in a two-way communication. So that's to gather or clarify particular details. You can also include observational data from watching how they interact with the product, so monitoring their responses. So again, in the Simpsons example, laughter to the cartoon was an observation that was made to suggest that they enjoyed and they interacted positively with that episode. And as it's a group of respondents, it can be efficient in terms of getting a number of responses in one sitting. Now, clearly, what they'll do is they'll have numerous focus groups, but in each sitting of that focus group, you get more than one response. But of course, there are issues, and such issues include groupthink. Now, what groupthink means is that respondents may feel the pressure to agree with the majority. They might find it hard to share their voice and believe it's easier just to simply follow the lead. So it really does depend on the personality of the individuals in the group. Introverts may struggle sharing their opinions, which means the data that might be collected actually might not be accurate. It also relies on the moderator or the host of the focus group to ensure that there is no bias. Everyone gets a voice and the environment is positive. So the next one that we're going to consider now is observations.
Where is this test subject looking? Small cameras in her glasses register her every eye movement. What packaging does she look at more closely? How important are labeling and prices?
Why did you decide for this coffee? Because I like it very much. It's a great mix of normal traditional Turkish coffee with this modern type of coffee.
Renata Brandova is a test subject in a Prague supermarket. Market researchers and the manufacturer of the glasses are tracking her gaze. Both men stay discreetly in the background. They want to know if Brandova will choose a specific ketchup from Austria.
Today we are testing how works those special pierced materials, how it helps to the product be more visible and more attractive for customers.
The German manufacturer of the glasses is interested in exact data.
We're testing something different. We're testing the product to measure all these attention spreads here on the ketchup shelf, and we want to find out if it works natural, if it influences somehow the participant, and if we can see what we need to see, namely the decision-making process.
Where customers look reveals how they think, and the information is in high demand.
So that example illustrated how technology could be used with observational research, but it doesn't have to be used, and it can be simply just the research team observing the interaction and the behaviour of the customers. Now, it should avoid bias, as you're simply observing the customer in real time, and hopefully in a natural or in their natural environment. It also collects non-verbal data, which actually might not be accessible by other methods. So if you think about, for example, a questionnaire where they're simply filling in maybe a survey, you don't see that natural engagement with the product that you're trying to collect data on. And it can also be quite easy to collect and set up because simply just monitoring and watching. So there are some issues with regards to observational research, and one of them is to do with the natural environment and how natural is it. So what we'll do now is we'll just consider the issues with observational, and I'll go back to that point that I've just mentioned. So to begin with, it may take time. So even though it's easy, if you want it to be as accurate as possible, it may take time to ensure you have enough observations in real time to have the appropriate data. And sometimes the data is limited as it's lacking the interaction with the customer unless you choose to follow it up. Some customers, and this is what I was talking about before, may not want that interaction, and also they might feel a bit uneasy with somebody monitoring them, and it could actually be or create an uncomfortable buy-in environment, which they do not want to be part of. So, the next one that we're going to look at is a survey, and a survey can be done via many forms. It can be done online, it can be done in a physical format, such as, for example, giving questionnaires in the high street. So yeah, due to technology, questionnaires can easily be created online, and it's accessible to all types of businesses, whether it's a startup or a larger company. So again, nowadays with technology, it can easily be distributed to a large number of respondents. So it's done via a shared website link or maybe an email from a customer database, that it can be literally sent to hundreds of people, thousands of people, just from that click of a mouse. But if it is to be done physically, then clearly it's going to be much more time consuming. Now, a broad range of data can also be collected, but of course that depends on how the questionnaire or survey has been designed. It doesn't have to be just quantitative. With questionnaires, there's qualitative aspects as well. However, often with surveys, you would see it to be more quantitative in terms of the data that's being collected. And finally, it's easy to administer. Again, often with technology, they can even instantly present the data for you and spot trends there and then. Now, some issues, including bias and how individuals may want to portray themselves, which may influence their answers, especially as it's recorded in your written or typed responses. Because obviously with regards to how questionnaires can be distributed and can be sent out, and because it can be sent out to such large groups, there isn't that engagement. Because again, they might be doing it away from you, you're not in close proximity to them, so that limits the qualitative ability for better understanding. And a question design needs to ensure it's not biased. So in terms of it being a leading question or making sure the questions are clear, because if the respondent is doing it from the comforts of their own home and in front of a laptop screen, and if they do struggle with understanding the question, then they may simply just quit the process, which limits the responses. Now, the final method we're going to consider is interviews. Now, this allows for that two-way communication with more of a personal interaction. And because if, for example, it's a face-to-face, or if it's done via video call, you're not just speaking to each other and collecting the verbal data, but you actually can get their visual data as well in terms of their facial expressions to certain questions. So there's more data that can be collected. Obviously, if it's a telephone interview, then that would only be verbal. Now, as it's two-way, and as there's follow-up questions that can be asked, then the data is going to be more detailed and qualitative, and you can find a greater understanding as to why they've answered certain questions. Yet, it can come at a cost, especially in terms of interviewing one at a time due to the time period it requires to interview a sample number. Due to the detailed opinion, it's not always easy to relay the information and present it to management or clients. And again, as mentioned with focus groups, it is completely dependent on the interviewer and their professionalism.